Hey everybody, welcome to the video. It's my favorite studs for week 7 of the NFL season over on Draftkings. Yeah, I know it's pretty easy to list off a bunch of expensive players because those are the guys that seem to do well each and every single week. That's why they're expensive. But you still got to pick your favorite ones each and every single week, and that's all I'm doing in this video. I'm also planning on releasing a favorite mid-range plays and a favorite value plays video later on in the week as well, so you can keep your eyes out for that. And also, if you find this video helpful in any way, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And without further ado, let's dive right into it. So we'll start with my favorite spend-up quarterback as of right now, and that's going to be Kyler Murray at $7,100. I love this game for fantasy purposes. We got a 56.5 point over-under, which is currently the highest on the slate, tied with the Atlanta Falcons and Detroit Lions game. And they also have a team total of 26.5, and they're only 3.5 point dogs versus Seattle. So I expect this game to be pretty back and forth. And I would expect Kyler Murray to have, once again, another good fantasy outing. He has yet to have a game below 24 fantasy points this season. I was just looking at his game log, and he's been at 29, 30, 24, 24, 33, and 27. Super safe and also a high ceiling as well, and that's due to his rushing ability. He's averaging over 60 rushing yards per game, so you kind of got a built-in 1.5 passing touchdown floor each and every single week, nearly running the ball 10 times per game with a rushing touchdown per game as well. So love the upside with Kyler Murray. He also gives that nice safe floor as well. He also has one of the best wide receivers in the game, DeAndre Hopkins, to throw the ball to, which definitely never hurts. And if you're looking at the matchup versus Seattle, I mean, it's just fantastic. You can't really ask for a much better matchup than Seattle besides Atlanta when it comes to the quarterback position. They're 29th DVA versus the pass, allowing nearly 400 passing yards per game, which is insane, and 28.5 DraftKings points per game as well, which, like I said, is the second most in the league, only behind the Falcons. So Kyler Murray, he's in a fantastic spot here. You can pair him up with DeAndre Hopkins, you can pair him up with Christian Kirk, and it's very easy to stack this game and run them back with someone like Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf or even Chris Carson if you want to. So Kyler Murray, $7,100. Yeah, there's some other good spend-up quarterbacks this week like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Russell Wilson, Rodgers, Deshaun Watson. All these guys are in good spots, but the rushing ability with Kyler Murray makes him pretty much the safest quarterback to roster each and every single week, and you get a bit of a discount off a guy like Russell Wilson, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes if you roll with Kyler Murray. So big fan of him this week. Pretty much been a big fan of him every single week this season, but definitely think he's going to have another good game this week versus the Seattle Seahawks. And then moving on to the running back position, we have Aaron Jones at $7,200. Yeah, the Packers had a very disappointing game versus the Buccaneers, but keep in mind, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a pretty strong defense. I was a little nervous about using any Packers last week. I still thought it was a good spot for them, and Vegas did too, but they were certainly wrong. Aaron Rodgers looked awful. He didn't have a touchdown. Aaron Jones had a touchdown, but he only had 10 carries for 15 yards. It was a pretty poor game all around for the Green Bay Packers offense, but I'm expecting a bounce-back game here versus Houston, and Vegas is as well. I mean, they have a team total of nearly 30 this week. It's currently at 29.75. Would not surprise me if we see that go up to 30 later on in the week. 56 point over-under and a 3.5 point spread. Pretty similar to what I was talking about with Kyler Murray, is that Seattle and Arizona game should be pretty high scoring. I feel like this game is going to be pretty similar. There's a lot of good fantasy options here. Rodgers, Jones, Davante Adams. On the other side, you got Deshaun Watson, Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller, I guess maybe David Johnson. But Aaron Jones, I like him a lot this week. I mean, anytime a running back is playing Houston this season, we should probably have some interest in them because they have really struggled versus opposing running backs this year. And we saw that with Derrick Henry last week. Now, I'm not expecting Aaron Jones to bust off a 94-yard touchdown, but if you take that away, Derrick Henry still had a pretty solid game. He got into the end zone. He had the game-winning touchdown. He still would have had over 100 rushing yards. So Jones should have a pretty strong game here. The Houston Texans are giving up nearly 200 rushing yards per game right now. It's right around 160 something, but if you round up, it's close to 200. Over a rushing touchdown per game right now as well. And they're 28th DVA versus the run, allowing the third most fantasy points per game to the running back position. We also know Aaron Jones is involved in the passing game as well, so he's pretty much game script proof. He's got a 17% target share in the season. And I just think he's going to bounce back in a big way here at $7,200. So definitely like Aaron Jones, and I don't think there's a reason why he should be the fifth highest priced wide receiver. Or, I'm sorry, not wide receiver, fifth highest priced running back. I feel like he should at least be top 3. I think he should be more expensive than Derrick Henry at the running back position this week, especially since he's going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he should be more expensive than Zeke. And obviously Christian McCaffrey, he's not playing, so you kind of have to take that out of the equation. But I think he should be right up there with ALVIN KAMARA. So $7,200, I think he's coming in at a pretty good price point. I'm definitely a fan of him versus the Houston Texans defense. And then speaking of Alvin Kamara, I like him quite a bit this week as well. Now, he's going to take a slight hit with Michael Thomas being back because he's no longer going to operate as pretty much the wide receiver one and the running back one in this offense. But we've still seen him have huge games with Michael Thomas in his career, so I'm not really too concerned about that. I just think he might take a slight hit in the targets department, but I mean, Drew Brees can certainly be a check down Charlie, and we know Alvin Kamara is still going to be fine here. He is a bit expensive at nearly $8,000, but this is a great matchup versus Carolina, and his involvement in the passing game is going to make him super safe every single week, and it's going to give him a high ceiling as well. Aaron Jones is involved in the passing game, but Alvin Kamara's passing game numbers kind of dwarf Aaron Jones' numbers in the passing game. Just looking at his numbers this season, nearly 9 targets per game, nearly 8 catches per game, a little bit over a half a receiving touchdown per game, and a 26% target share with a 45% weighted opportunity share. Those numbers through the air are nearly wide receiver one-like numbers. Again, Michael Thomas will be returning from his disciplinary suspension, if that's what you want to call it. So those numbers might take a slight hit, but we know Kamara's upside is absolutely insane. He's one of my favorite players in the league just to watch him play. His balance, agility, ability to make guys miss, and what he can do in the open space. I mean, it's just really fun watching Alvin Kamara play football. Doesn't do too much damage on the ground, but the guy's a touchdown scoring machine, and he can be very efficient with his touches. And the matchup, like I mentioned earlier, it's very, very good versus Carolina. They're 26th DVA versus the run, allowing the 4th most points per game to the running back position with over 30 points allowed per game, over 100 rushing yards per game, and over a rushing touchdown per game as well. And they're actually kind of getting killed through the air by running backs, and we know that's Alvin Kamara's bread and butter. I mean, they're allowing nearly 8 catches per game and over 50 receiving yards per game. So Kamara, I think he's going to be in for a pretty big one here, and I know he's a bit expensive. I don't think you have to get there in cash games, but you can definitely make a case for him being one of the top plays on the entire slate. So again, a bit pricey, but the matchup's there and the talent's obviously there. We know Alvin Kamara's upside, so I do like him quite a bit versus this pretty poor Carolina run D. And then we move on to our first wide receiver, and it's the most expensive one on the slate, but he gets the absolute nuts matchup versus Seattle. I mean, they have absolutely struggled versus wide receivers this season, and you're pretty much getting the best wide receiver in football, DeAndre Hopkins. Super expensive at $8,200, but I mean, I think there's a good chance Hopkins goes absolutely off here versus Seattle. And obviously, it's a good pairing with Kyler Murray as well. Now, it's a very expensive pairing, so you're probably going to be sacrificing a high-end running back if you choose to do that, but in tournaments, it can certainly work out. I mean, Hopkins could go over 30 points in this game. They are just getting absolutely killed by wide receivers this season. And if you're looking at the specific numbers, it sounds crazy, but the Seahawks are allowing nearly 300 receiving yards just alone to wide receivers this season per game. Obviously, we're receiving touchdown per game, and 64.2 DraftKings points allowed to the position this year, which is dead last in the league, and they're 29th DVA versus the pass. So Hopkins, he's in pretty much the best spot you can ask for. I don't really think anyone on that Seattle Seahawks secondary is going to be able to stop him. He's also very heavily involved every single week as well now. If you're looking at the game on Monday night, it was not pretty for DeAndre Hopkins, but you really can't put the blame on him. Kyler Murray kept missing him. I mean, there's a couple of plays where DeAndre Hopkins is wide open and Kyler Murray just simply missed him. Now, fortunately, he kind of saved you at the end where he had that nearly 60, 70-yard catch, but even then, it was still not what you were really looking for DeAndre Hopkins. You needed a much bigger game. He only had 2 catches that game, and he was pretty much at a catch for, I don't know, was it 8, 9, 10 yards for pretty much the entire game, and it was looking like absolute bust city. He still busted at his price point, but at least it wasn't as bad as it could have been. But I guess that's more of an outlier. The Cardinals were killing the Cowboys, and I expect the Cardinals to be trailing this game, which means a heavy dosage of DeAndre Hopkins, and wide receivers go off versus them every single week. And on the season, he's got a 31.7% target share, 67% weight opportunity share, nearly 10 targets per game, and over 100 receiving yards per game. So Hopkins, he should pretty much be smash shitty here versus a very, very poor Seattle pass defense. And then moving on to the next guy, Davante Adams at $7,900. He's right below DeAndre Hopkins, but it's kind of... So I view these guys, if you're using Kyler Murray, you should pair him up with DeAndre Hopkins, obviously, and if you happen to use Aaron Rodgers this week, you pair him up with Davante Adams. But I like Adams in all formats. I think he's fine for cash games. And actually, if I had to pick between Adams or Hopkins for cash games, I'm probably going to I'm going to side with Adams just because it's a little bit cheaper. I don't know, it just feels a little bit safer in cash games. I know he had a disappointing week last week versus Tampa Bay, but keep in mind, that was a difficult matchup versus Tampa Bay. They got a pretty stingy defense, and Aaron Rodgers was just not having a good day. But I expect them to bounce back here versus Houston. They just don't have that great of a defense. And we saw last week what Tennessee did versus them. We saw all 3 of their main pieces have very good games. Ryan Tannehill had an outstanding game. Derrick Henry had an amazing game. A.J. Brown had a very solid game. So, I mean, I think I could see Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, and Davante Adams all having some pretty good games here. And he's pretty much a similar play to DeAndre Hopkins, where he's going to get the volume each and every single week. He's super talented, one of the best wide receivers in football, getting 10 targets per game, a target share around 30%, and it's a soft matchup versus Houston, and they've been a little bit tougher versus the air compared to the ground, but even then, they're 20th DVA versus the pass, and they're 23rd versus opposing wide receivers. Sounds like it's really that difficult of a matchup. So Davante Adams, he should be able to eat here, but I got to be honest, it's going to be really tough picking between Hopkins or Adams if you have the salary this week. And then the last wide receiver I want to talk about is Julio Jones at $7,100. I like this price tag quite a bit. He's going to grade out well in projections, just point per dollar wise, considering he's over $1,000 cheaper than DeAndre Hopkins and $800 cheaper than Davante Adams. And he's coming off a very good game. And really the two games that Julio Jones has played healthy this year versus the Seattle Seahawks and the Minnesota Vikings. Now, albeit those are two of the softest matchups you can ask for, but he still went off in those games. I mean, week 1 versus Seattle, nearly had 30 DraftKings points, caught 9 balls for 157 yards on 12 targets. Then last week, returning from injury, he had 10 targets, caught 8 of those for 2 touchdowns and 137 receiving yards, where he had nearly 40 DraftKings points. Now, I don't think he's going to get 40 DraftKings points again, but this is a very good spot here versus the Detroit Lions, who they just don't really have that great of a defense versus the run or versus the pass. Now, they do actually rank 12th DVA versus the pass, but 2 wide receivers, they're 25th in allowing over 40 DraftKings points per game to the position, nearly 200 receiving yards per game, and over a receiving touchdown per game as well. And the Falcons have one of the highest implied team totals this week. They're kind of right up there with the Green Bay Packers, specifically at that 29.75, and it's only a 3-point spread in this game with a 56.5 point over-under. And Matt Ryan looked good last week, which was good because he was slumping hard. He started the season off hot, but then he was on a really just rough stretch. But keep in mind, Matt Ryan always seems to play much better with Julio Jones, which is obvious. He's one of the best wide receivers in football. So Julio Jones, he looked healthy last week, and if he's going to be healthy coming into this game, I think we expect around double-digit targets, and he should have a pretty strong game, and I still think he's a little bit underpriced. Last week, he was below 7K, which was, I wish I was a little bit heavier on Julio Jones, but I was not, unfortunately, just a little bit worried there. But it was nice to see him have a pretty huge game, and I feel like his price is not as high as it should be. So $7,100 should have a pretty strong game here, and I think he stays hot. I'm just not sure if he's going to score 2 touchdowns. I'm hoping he scores a touchdown, although we know Julio Jones does have some touchdown scoring issues, but it was nice to see him get 2 last week for sure. And he's in another good spot here versus Detroit, and he has one of the biggest wide receiver versus cornerback matchup advantages this week according to PFF. And then finally, we move on to the tight end position. It was really just a toss-up here of either George Kittle or Travis Kelce. Those are your really only 2 expensive tight ends, because after those 2 guys, it drops down to the 5 and 4K range. And I'm going to side with the guy who's on a much better offense in Travis Kelce at $6,300. I mean, this Chiefs offense, it's going to be hard to stop him. I mean, you got so many good options. You got Tyreek Hill, you got Travis Kelce, obviously, best tight end in football. Although I guess it's kind of a toss-up with George Kittle, but Travis Kelce is on the better offense with the better quarterback throwing the ball. You have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who looked awesome last night. You have Le'Veon Bell, the new guy coming in. I'm not sure how he's going to be used quite yet, but he's still going to be a factor on this team. Watkins isn't healthy currently, but you got Robinson, you got McCole Hardman. It's just a tough offense to stop. So you really can't just key in on stopping Travis Kelce, because if you do that, that means Tyreek Hill is probably running free, or Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to have an extra running lane. So you really can't stop this team, and you got Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball. He caught 2 touchdowns last night versus Buffalo. And the matchup versus Denver, they're mid-pack versus the tight end position, but they still have a team total of 28.5 this week, and Kelce's numbers are obviously going to be very good. I mean, nearly 9 targets per game, nearly a receiving touchdown per game, 24% target share, and a 25% market share of the team's air yards this season. And obviously, he's got a good matchup advantage according to PFF this week. He's going to have that pretty much every single week, no matter who he's going up against. So if you're spending up for the tight end position this week, I think it's a toss-up between either George Kittle or Travis Kelce. But I'm going to start with the guy who's on a better team with a higher team total, and he's got Patrick Mahomes throwing him the football, which definitely never hurts your chances of having a pretty strong game. So Travis Kelce would be my favorite stud tight end this week. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. So like I mentioned earlier, if you found this video helpful, please leave a like on the video. And if you're new to the channel, consider hitting that subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I really do appreciate that. I will get my showdown video out this morning as well. And I'll have my mid-range plays video maybe out later this evening or tomorrow, and then I'll do the value plays video as well. So appreciate you listening, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.